Welcome to Real
Want to make
World
sure I
News
queue it up.
TV. Welcome to Real World News TV. We are now live. We are live.
Well, good evening, good evening, everyone. I'm Derek Terry.
Hi, Derek.
There's Reginald Kearney, and there's Sharon Taplin. How's everybody doing?
Yeah, good.
All right, so I have the distinct privilege of I guess moderating or this particular segment. I'm trying to fix my camera. It doesn't want to stay still. But today we're going to talk about mental health. That is something very, very personal to me. And, for those of viewers out there, we know that, one will experience a mental health condition in their lifetime. And, African Americans were definitely no exception. According to the Health and Human Services Office of Minority Health, African Americans are about 20% more likely to experience serious mental.
Hey, Reggie, it looks like, did we lose Derek for a moment?
We're going to go ahead and continue with the stream and the broadcast. Seems like there have been some difficulty on Derek's side, so we'll just go ahead and try and pick up where he was leading in. But today it is said that 46.6 million adults in the United States face the reality of managing their mental health. I'm going to go ahead and bring Derek back in.
All right, not sure what happened, so I'll start for the technical difficulties. I'm back on my laptop, but despite approximately population percent of experience homelessness and more mental health, and we all know mental health, particularly in the Black and as well as amongst many people are not aware of how the effects have a direct impact on what's going on as related to mental health. Pick up approximately 1 million of the nation's 2.3 million incarcerated population. Let's take a look at incarceration, and we're looking at 2.1 million. That's all that when people are incarcerated, that can do the short term and in the long term. We all come from connection problems. Everyone here has a problem with now. Everyone here?
We hear you. We can hear you.
No, I was having a hard time hearing him.
Okay.
So because he's having some,
it's going to be that kind of day.
I'm going to kind of jump in, and I want Derek to try and get his camera and his audio together so that we don't have so much of an interruption on the show. But I was glad that he brought this subject to the table. And the reason why is because we don't talk about mental health in the Black community, I think, as much as we should. I don't think that we look at it as not being a medical condition. I think that a lot of times we look at it as a way of saying, oh, well, he's crazy or she's crazy. What do you think about that, though, Reggie? Do people think that's the reason why?
Yeah, that's very true, because if you go back and look at our forefathers, in the era of our grandparents and great grandparents, there was always Uncle Tony who was somewhat staying up in the room all the time. Okay, And they will always just make the comment that Uncle Tony isn't doing well. He's kind of pulled away from the world and stuff. So even during the time of our grandparents and great grandparents, mental illness was something that was big, but it was something that was shunned, especially in the Black community, as being shameful. Okay, you didn't want anybody to know you had somebody in your family that wasn't all there. Okay, so you kind of hid that person. So I think a lot of it centers around shame. I think all of us have been affected by mental illness at one time or the other.
Mm-hmm.
But because of positions that we might hold in the community and things we might do, we try to keep it under the rug, and that's not a good thing.
So Derek, are you finally back?
Yeah, I was in the man cave. I guess the man cave was not operating with modern day technology. So I said, let me come up to second level. So hoping that this works better. And my apologies for those technical difficulties. I thought we had did all the testing, but I guess it didn't work. So, with keeping that in mind, I'll just try to continue where I left off at. And just for everyone that's viewing, to let you know that, mental health it doesn't really center around race per se, but what we can say is that regardless of your profession, we all will definitely suffer some form of mental illness, whether diagnosed or not. Just to give you a rundown of some of the mental health disorders, we have anger, we have anxiety, panic attacks, we have bipolar disorder, depression, eating problems, paranoia, PTSD or post-traumatic stress syndrome, schizophrenia, and suicide, to name a few. So myself, I personally have suffered from depression as well as PTSD. And this was brought about based on the military culture as well as the African American culture, where basically, you man up and you press on. And that's unfortunately just the way that I was brought up. And a lot of my friends were brought up, whether in the military or within the African American community. And, before I continue, can y'all see my full view, my full face?
I got about this much.
Right.
Perfect.
Okay. Yeah, it seemed like it doesn't want to stay. I don't know if it's something wrong with my camera or what. But so when we're looking at mental health and how we address it, to erase the stigma means that we have to be open and real with ourselves. And unfortunately, it takes a traumatic experience to get us to the point to where we seek help. Like for me personally, I almost lost my marriage and my kids, and probably my life had I not sought professional guidance and professional counseling. I didn't know that I was changing. There was things that I was dealing with a lot of deaths in the family. I was dealing with work. I was dealing with being deployed and the things that I experienced, and it took its toll on me where I just had a mental breakdown. So when we look at mental health and we look at how is it, especially when we're talking about African Americans, we have to come to terms that yes, it's okay to seek help. It's okay to acknowledge that there is something wrong, because to me, it's like anything, even with drug addiction. The first thing that you must do to solve any problem is to acknowledge you have a problem. And if you can't acknowledge it, it makes it very difficult to, get the help that you need and get better. And I'm fortunate, but unfortunately, there's a lot of people that I know that, took a different route.
Yeah.
So anybody want to add on to their personal experience?
Yeah, I think we all been down that road. I've had my problems. I think one of the trigger for me was when my father passed away in '92, and that really put me into a funk. Okay, and I had to fight. I had to fight my way out of. I went to a psychologist and went through talk therapy and along with medication. I was able to get out of that funk, because I agree with you, Derek. You do get into a funk where you take for granted the people around you, and You get into your own little world and you forget that you're married, you're a family man, you're doing stuff in the community, and you just, isolate yourself. And that's not good. But, there are things that trigger, but, I think the thing is, like you said, we got to realize it's an illness. And when it hits, we've got to take care of it. And we got to encourage others that we might see symptoms or edginess to them. We must, encourage them to get the help that they need. And I think that's the biggest thing, encouraging. And I found out even in the church can't help you either, because the church is not equipped to deal with situations like that. They have to do recommendations. So, you can't go to your pastor and then seek help from your pastor, because your pastor hasn't been trained on how to deal with mental health. They might be consider themselves counselors in a biblical way, but they can't deal with mental health. And so they have to be able to send you and get you in the right direction to help you, get the help that you need.
Okay. And Cheryl, what about you? Whether it's something personal or something outside of yourself when dealing with mental illness?
I've been down that path myself. In college, I went through some depression, and I was probably not diagnosed with a thyroid condition, and so been thrown off chemically and balanced as well, and lost a lot of weight and got very ill. And someone had to point out to me that I was that ill that I needed to go and seek help, that I was eating and stuff like that. And it always makes me think how there are two things that Western society isn't really good on, and that is teaching people how to communicate, and communicate with each other and themselves, which includes a certain degree of self-reflection and spiritual development. Those two things, to me, I feel as though are stifled. And if you can't admit to yourself, like you said, that there's an issue, if you can't see it or recognize it in yourself one way or another, you can't broach that subject with others. And you have to hope that others are strong enough to approach it with you, to help pull you from the brink if you can't do it yourself.
Yeah, and I think one of the biggest challenges I had to deal with when I was dealing with depression is when all these deaths happened in a span of 3 or 4 years. I tried to do things that would keep my mind off it. And this may be the first time that Brother Kearney is hearing this. What kept me together during that dark time was the frat. When I was president, I'll be honest with you, and they really, anything that was going on internally wasn't bothering me, because what I was dealing with was far worse than anything I could encounter, but it kept me busy. It kept me active. It kept me engaged. But what I was finding out, and I'm not the deepest spiritual person that I should be, but I questioned God. I was mad at God. I was like, what God would take away all these people out of my life at just like that? For me, every Christmas Eve is difficult, because my dad, it would be 10 years my dad passed away. And every Christmas Eve I'm reminded. And, for me, it was very difficult. And at times it still is. But I do know when I went to counseling, there was a lot of stuff that was dormant that I kept inside and I totally forgot about as a kid. Some things that had happened to me, some things I experienced, it helped me realize, wow, that's why I'm like this, and you'll be amazed what counseling will do when it will tap inside those things that have been just dormant and just staying there. And those really, for those that are listening, if you're feeling challenged, or you're tackling, one of these mental health issues, it's okay to seek help. And I think we have some resources on here: the suicide hotline, depression, bipolar support. I don't have my glasses on, so it's kind of blurry. But for those that can see it, there's some resources out there. And this is just a few of many. And we encourage people, whether or not you're looking at this live, you look at this later, we encourage you to seek that help, especially to my fellow veterans. I belong on a veteran group. It's almost half a million people on this group, and daily there are posts about soldiers, airmen, whatever it may be, who want to end their life. And they say, and we try to talk them out of it, as we're really like our own support group. And to me, that's disheartening. It's sad, just to have this discussion, me holding it together, because, and just like Jacqueline said, so much is needed, but at the same time, we have to be able to reach out to them and have them want to help themselves to a degree.
Yeah.
Well, it's such a stigma. I remember years ago. I can't remember. Oh Lord, his name is on the tip of my tongue. He's over in Montgomery County, Maryland. He was running for governor, and he had been fighting depression for years, and he was a career politician. But I think the biggest thing that kept him from really coming out and letting people know what was going on in his life was the fact that, because of being a career politician, it could have really affected him, run for governor and things like that. Eventually, he did come out and talked about the struggles he was having with mental health, and he dropped out the governor's race. But I think that's the biggest thing. People feel like it's a stigma. You're supposed to be this big man in the community, or you're a big man in the fraternity, you're a big man in your household, or you're a big man in your job. You're supposed to be strong. You're not supposed to be weak. And I think a lot of people feel like when you talk about mental illness, you're looking at a person that's weak. Or
Well, they may also fear people using it against them.
Yeah.
And like for me, my brief political moment, there was something that was said by the POTUS. I mean, it pissed me off to the core when he talked about those who have PTSD are weak. He kind of summarized it. If you have PTSD, then you're weak. And I'm thinking this is coming from someone
who's never served,
who had the audacity to not even serve. And I think a couple of days ago I talked about empathy. That if you have not been in that person's shoes, be honest with you, shut the hell up, because you're judging someone and you haven't even been put in that situation. And I mean that I don't really talk too much about Trump on my Facebook pages, because I as far as coming up with posts, I may interact with people because it would piss me off. But when you talk about things you don't know what you're talking about, that pisses me off to the utmost. And people, mental health is real, especially amongst men. And we have to, my question to everyone is, how do we erase the stigma? What do we do in the community to erase the stigma that, yes, mental health exists? How can we combat it or get help?
We're doing that. We're combating it now. I mean, the thing is, you got to confront it head on, and that's what we're doing. We're talking about our own personal side. Now, I don't talk about my personal life that much, so for me to get over here and talk about what I've been through, that's a milestone for me. Okay, because it's something I don't discuss, but that's what's needed. More discussion is needed from people that have a platform to let people know that it's okay. It's an illness. It's just like getting a cold. It's like, it's an illness. And that's how we got to deal with it and approach it. Because if we don't, there's going to be a lot of suffering people out there that might decide, I got to exit this life because I can't deal with it no more. And that's why we got to use our platform at times to let the community know it's okay. It's all right. It's no problem.
Yeah.
That's what we got to do.
So, question: when we are confronted with mental illness, let's say there is a person. What's this on here? I'm sorry. As I'm talking, stuff pops up on the screen. So, I'm guessing this is if you live in the Southern California area, these are centers or organizations that can provide you with some mental health sessions or some type of guidance or assistance. So look like they're in LA, Mid-City, Watts. So, definitely if you're in the California area or the LA area, these are some centers where if you're seeking some mental health assistance, you can definitely go there. But what I wanted to address is one of the, and I guess the one that I see the most, which is more visible, is anger.
Mhm.
Anger is a mental health disorder. If you're constantly angry, if you can't control your temper, there's something else going on. What
There-
what are some things that under normal circumstances that you've seen people get angry over?
Oh, the simplest of things, like somebody getting their order wrong, somebody bumping into them, getting out of in their way, road rage.
And what about you, Reggie?
I agree with Shara. It's the simplest of things. When you see somebody reacting to the simplest of things, you know there's something there. Even if you see it in your coworkers, there's something there, and that's the one place you don't want to see it is with your coworkers. When you look at the amount of violence that's taking place in the workforce because of people that were on the edge or the company pushed them to do something that was drastic, But that's what I look when I see somebody just reacting to something that's minute. Then I say, something's wrong, something's going on with them. But if you don't know the person, you can't approach them because if you approach them as a stranger, they're really going to flip off then, because they feel like you're trying to get into their business or they're going to say, there's nothing wrong with me. I'm okay. They just didn't get my order right. I'm upset because of that,
I feel like we're just not taught the tools to control that primal rage, that monkey brain, as these Buddhist groups might refer to it. And people fly into a rage, and I usually find, obviously, they're not thinking very logically or coherently in that moment. They are deep in that pit of primal response. And I think that if in schools, like there's some schools now that instead of putting children in the corner or corporal punishment or anything like that, they're sending them to meditate. And I think that if we start teaching our youth these types of coping skills, hopefully as they grow up, they won't have as many issues as we have.
Yeah, and I think some of the way in which you act can to some degree be, I guess, modeled by your kids. If I'm constantly cursing and yelling, then I'm hoping they don't do the same, but I can tell as they get older they might. So you kind of, with the adult in me, has to check myself and say, wait a minute, I need to calm down. Because if I don't calm down, this is what they constantly see. My mom, and she's probably not on here right now, but when she gets on here, she may cuss me out. But my mom was a cusser. She was a yeller. And as I got older, I was like, I didn't want to deal with all that. I didn't like people to cuss and yell and all that. That's what got me mad as I got older. And I can see it like in my son. When I do that, he gets upset. So with me, I have to learn to train and recondition myself. Because if I don't want anybody doing that to me, I have to think about, okay, what if I do that to them and how to react? Yeah. But what I want to do real quick is touch on something from a different profession, meaning teaching. And the reason I say that, for those that are teachers out there or no teachers, is a very, very stressful job. And believe it or not, there's a lot of teachers that have mental health issues. Now, I'm not saying this particular teacher has a mental health issue, but as I read a portion of the letter that she wrote years ago, it kind of resonated with me and made me, that's kind of why I left. So what I want to do, I just wanted to read a small excerpt from here. And she had stated, I'm not leaving because I dislike teaching. I love teaching. I'm leaving because I, as knowledgeable and passionate individual, cannot teach here. My personal desire to teach here has been overpowered by the level of stress and pressure placed on the professionals in the building. I have to be respectful of myself and the people dear to me who deal with the person they get when I leave school every day. Have grown morally sick by the way public education is regarding minority students. I have learned that this is a toxic career for people who have yet to hit the financial zone where the tediousness of it all is bearable. I didn't push myself this far to accept bearable. So what you have is what many teachers feel is that you put them, they came there to teach, and there's all these punching bags that are coming at you that you're putting your arms up to put yourself in a better situation. And then when you leave, you're leaving with all that stress and you're taking it home.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what happens in some other professions, whether you're a police officer and they have a very dangerous and stressful job. If you're dealing with homicides all day, how do you come home to your kids? Hey kids, how you doing? That's difficult.
Yeah.
I don't care how you put it. That is very difficult to be in a murder scene, and then you go home to your kids like it didn't happen. Something, it's staying with you.
Mm-hmm.
You brought up a good point a minute ago, talking about your son. We also had to learn how to deal with the mental illness that's happening among our young people. Okay, there's been a spike in suicides among young African Americans, and is because of bullying and things of that nature. So we really got to be cognizant of our kids and our grandkids and make sure we're watching them and looking for certain behaviors and changing their behaviors. And if it is, we need to question that behavior pattern, because we don't know where it's going to lead to, So I'm having a hard time putting my arms around mental illness among our children now. What happened? What has made them, for some of who they are right now? I don't understand. I can't get with it,
Well, some of it is attributed to what's going on at home. Some of it is attributed to what they look at on TV.
Mm-hmm.
I wish I could air it. I could put it on here. There's something from a foundation I work with called Light the Way. And we had about 15 extraordinary and bright students do a roughly 20-minute documentary on basically looking at violence on the media and how it affects them as a kid. I don't know how to put it on here. I don't know if Tony's still here, but if I can find that, I can show you a brief clip of it, and you can hear these stories. I just don't know how to get it on here, so I wait for Tony to put her message on here. So I may have to input it in there and see if she can put it on. So it's actually let me find it, and then I'll put it on there as Shara talks.
You beat me to the punch, because I was going to say, obviously there's what's happening in the home, but what's causing depression in children, what historically is caused depression in children: bullying, not feeling like you fit in, feeling different. And then you think about the sexualization of all of the things that they're watching on TV or music, and how little girls are made to feel that their only value is in their sexuality, and boys are made to feel like they have to be freaking toxic in order to be considered real men, coupled with all of this distraction that makes us give into commercialism and owning things we can't afford. It's distracting us from growing, I think, mentally, psychologically, spiritually. You look at countries where their children are able to do multiple sports and keep busy and occupied and interested and enthusiastic and curious about life, rather than being stuck at home, latchkey kid, watching TV or hanging out in the corner with your fellas, or some of the options that existed when I was growing up in the city. There weren't that many. There was a vacant lot across the street, which is now NYU dorms, that was just a dump for years. And I used to think, geez, if they had a community center there, all of the kids in this neighborhood would have something healthy to do instead of getting into all the mischief that they did.
But, But you know something else we got to look at too, especially here in the area we live in, there in the D.C. area, is the amount of killings that's taking place in our neighborhoods of young kids. And I know that has to have an effect on the psyche of other young kids seeing their friends, 10 and 11-year-old, being shot, unintentionally through the violence that's taking place in our neighborhoods. And I'm pretty sure that does a lot to the psyche. Having to deal with that in the inner city, the different killings, not even with the kids, seeing adults getting killed and having killings taking place in your family with loved ones being killed by gun violence. I can't even imagine what's going on in Chicago right now. Because the population size is larger, but I can't even imagine what's going on with those kids in Chicago.
And I think sometimes what happens is that so there's people in society that say, you know what, they're used to it. No one should ever get used to seeing someone get shot. No one should ever get used to hearing gunshots. My cousin stayed in the East Side, in the projects in Somerset way back in the day. They're torn down now. And that's the first time I'd heard gunshots. And it scared the living daylights out of me. But he had heard it so many times that he became numb.
Yeah.
So when he came out to Harford County, where I grew up part of my life, he heard crickets. You would think that it was World War II. He's like, what is that? It's a cricket, and you couldn't see it. So you're looking at being scared of a cricket, but yet you're so immune to gunshots.
Yeah.
So Tony, I've sent the link to Tony. So if she could queue up, I want y'all to watch maybe about 2 minutes of this video, and it's from Light the Way Foundation, and it's traumatizing kids and the mental illness they have to deal with. And we'll briefly talk about this. We put on about 2 minutes. Oh, it's queued up, so I just got to hit play. Or did she hit play? I guess she got to hit play.
Mm-hmm.
Hey.
Not good because when you're posting on social
What if it's going through?
media, feeling scared of the police, it's not all the police that are bad.
Hang on.
Some people are not good.
Hang tight. Just hang tight.
That's Tony. If y'all haven't seen her, if you didn't see her at the beginning of the show, she's the one doing our audio video.
Oh my God! Because you spring stuff on me. All right. Here we go.
You got it, Tony?
Here we go.
Be careful or they're just being rougher than other police officers.
I think the videos make people scared of police officers, make them really mad, and make them do bad things towards them, to make them do more and more things to other people. And these videos can affect people in a devastating way because people get shot or killed. Little kids are like on the internet now, and they can see it and they can become scared of all police because they could be thinking that could happen to me.
Because they affect people in a negative way. They might have been having or whatever, something good going for them. They're in a good mood, and then they see one of these and they're just like, oh, all right, it's time to go back to reality.
There's other kids, there can be like toddlers or toddlers can just be clicking on videos, and it could be one of those bad types of videos. It makes me feel really awful because that shouldn't happen, and it has a big impact on kids' lives. Like you have.
All right. So now this is, like I said, just 2 minutes of I can't remember how many. There was 15 kids on there, and they shared their stories. I think these are kids that are young as 9 years old, as old as I believe 12 years old. It's unscripted. They're speaking from the heart. So it's not like, we gave them a cue card and said, you need to say this. And you can definitely hear in their voice, how they're sincere, they're genuine, and in some cases to pain. So if you don't, if you want to see the whole video, basically go on YouTube, The Impact, or you can go to lightthewayfoundation.org and you can see the video on there. So, this is just one of the foundations that I work with. And, our goal is to empower kids, but they chose the theme this year. And the theme was, being traumatized by what's shown on the media. So,
But I keep thinking, just before we split to this video, the powers that be don't care if we're damaged. It probably suits their purpose because it makes it easier to control us. Otherwise, this couldn't be allowed.
And I think it's the powers that be, but it could be by race, it could be by classification.
Yeah.
Because there's plenty of uppity Black folks who give a damn about what's going on at the bottom.
Yeah.
And that's unfortunate. I think when we look at people as human beings, and I can't remember who told me, but they's like everyone's 2-3 paychecks from being homeless.
One paycheck.
It depends on how you do it. It could be one paycheck, 2 or 3, but being hungry, so you need to make sure that we look after one another, and that can start with mental. Imagine what losing your job or getting fired could do to your mental health. I'm saying it's evident what's been going on in the world. People lose their job, they go there and start shooting, and they already had something was already wrong from the giddy up. So, those are things that we want to try to address as best we can. Now, Tony said that Jacqueline was going to be on. So as Jacqueline is going to be on, I'm going to run downstairs and get my cell phone because I can't cue people in. I probably could on here, but I don't know how to do it. So it's easier doing it on the cell phone. So, but in the meantime, what did you think of the video, Reggie?
Well, it was a good video. I mean, it's a type of video that can be used as an instructional video to spend time in our mentoring groups with, with young people and get feedback from them on what they're saying. I assume that these kids are Baltimore kids.
No, these are DC, PG County.
PG County kids, yeah. And like I said, a lot is going on around them. But the one thing I took away from it also was that fear of the police officer. Okay. I think we as Americans especially African Americans, have been so traumatized by what's going on in our communities with the police. We as grown-ups can kind of look at it and see it, make our judgment call on it, and move on. But for kids, it's kind of hard seeing people that's supposed to be protecting them, taking the community through the stuff that it takes the community through. So that was a takeaway for me to see them, how they express themselves about police officers and things of that nature.
And how do you protect them from that? On the one hand, if you don't say anything, then they go out into the world ignorant and possibly, can unfortunately trigger some trigger-happy cop. Or you tell them and cause them sort of psychic trauma by living in this fear, like you mentioned.
Yeah, because I know, like with my son, I try to tell him, like, look, that mouth is gonna get you in trouble. You're gonna run into the wrong cop, and I'm a firm believer. I think there's more good cops than there are bad cops. I think what gets most people upset is the silence of the good cops when those bad cops are out there. When you say nothing, to me, in my mind, when you say nothing, you're just as guilty as the one who committed the crime. And I hate to use this example. If you know that person is a rapist, and you chose to say nothing, you're just as guilty for that rape because you let them continue. You let them continue, knowing. Now I won't, everyone's innocent to proven guilty, so we'll just say R. Kelly. But you look at the psychological effects that he had. Something was going on in his head. There's a mental disorder there. It's not an excuse, but there's something going on. And there's also something going on with those who remain silent, whatever that may be. So what we need to do is, as a Black community, African American community, however you want to label Black African American, we need to take ownership of ourselves and that village concept. And I think we've gotten away from that. I remember back in the day, there's no way in the world I could walk down the neighborhood at 11 o'clock at night. Somebody said, boy, you should be in the house. Because they knew I was supposed to be in the house. Now it's like, who this guy? He trying to steal something? Who is? Because no one knows their neighbors.
Yeah.
It's like you move there and that's it.
Yeah, I agree with that, because, and I think another thing, 'cause I'm a little older than you all. Coming up in the, okay, Tony, there ain't nobody asked you to shake your head, but coming up and growing up in the community, I grew up in the South, and I think Derek, you grew up in Birmingham for a while. The neighborhoods weren't integrated. Okay, they were segregated neighborhoods, so everybody on your street was either a friend, a cousin, or whatever. Okay, and if you did something out of the norm, you got whooped before you got home, and they'd get on the phone and call your parents. You get another whooping when you get home. You know, so that closeness was there. But I think what has happened, like in my community, the neighborhood I live in, you know, all my neighbors are white. You know, so they're not gonna have an interest in my grandkids or my kid doing something wrong. You know, they're gonna look at it, you know, or I'm not gonna have an interest in what their kids are doing. You know, unless they're out there on the street fighting or something, I might step in or something like that. So I agree with you that thinking it takes a village to, you know, to do whatever we got to do. That concept is gone. You know, because of the neighborhoods we live in there.
Yeah. Tony, are you with us?
No.
Are we still waiting on We're still waiting on Jacqueline?
Jacqueline's coming back. I've got her right now. Let's go ahead and add her to the stream.
I'll be right back.
Oh boy.
No, you can add her to the screen. I have to run downstairs. I'll be right back.
Hi, Miss Jacqueline.
Hey, Jacqueline.
Hello, how are y'all doing?
Good,
I'm doing
good.
great. Are you hearing me okay?
Perfect.
Yes.
Okay.
So what do you have to add to tonight's conversation regarding the challenges of mental illness in the Black communities?
Well, it just definitely you see the stigma out there. And I know for a fact because I've been through this. And, you know, you go through that stigma of course, looking crazy or being crazy, whatever. But it gets to a point, like I said in the chat, you got to get over yourself and realize if you truly need the help, you need to go get the help. Because life can just weigh down on you so much to where, you know, it's not enough to try to deal with it on your own.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And see, that's what we're taught as a Black community, you know, get over it, you know, hang tough and, you know, but sometimes in life really weighs down on you where you can't handle it. You can't get over it yourself. So what do?
You know, but I think that a lot of times, I think that we don't understand that mental illness, for the most part, I don't think that people realize that these are chemical imbalances. You know, just like, you know, I don't want to, like I said in the promo, it's not that people are crazy. That's the first thing people, I think Reggie had said that earlier when I was off camera, but a lot of times, you know, people will then throw a label on it or they throw a name to it and not understand that mental illness is a big tie to medical issues. There are imbalances that have to be addressed. It's not that you're crazy. You don't have to be schizophrenic. You don't have to be bipolar. You don't have to have all of these said names. These are chemical imbalances that are even tied to depression. You know, even depression is an imbalance. Something is off, and there is a need to be able to have someone either help you, whether it's just to sit down and talk and get through some of those things and get things out in the open, or it could be something that is tied to the I'm going to say the neurological portion of your being that requires medication. So a lot of people don't realize that, yes, it's not something that you can run away from, because you can't just say I'm gonna cope with it, knowing or not knowing.
You may not be
that
able to
it's
cope
But
with
some
it.
people have too much. A big problem is pride. A big problem is pride.
Right. I agree with
You
that.
know,
I agree. But a lot of that comes
Yeah.
from the people of which you're around, I would think, because I think that we all need someone that is going to be a support system.
I think, Tony, to touch on something that you said too, it is, I agree with the notion about, being chemically imbalanced and things of that nature, because I went through that as well when I went thyrotoxic. But you also have to have a medical professional who will listen, pay attention, and properly diagnose you.
and take you serious.
Because they put me on, sleep aids and antidepressants, and it turned out I had a thyroid dysfunction.
Mhm.
And so being misdiagnosed for 20 years, I had to almost die for them to figure it out. It looked like a crackhead for a little while, lost 40 pounds, goiter, blah, blah. And it was horrible. And talk about chemically imbalanced. I was this shy of winding up on an episode of Snapped.
Yeah.
But once they finally figured it out, and I started taking the correct medication, which isn't a psychotropic or anything like that, it's just a hormone replacement. I'm fine as can be. Outside of the normal stresses of life. But if you don't have a medical professional that cares about you, that gives a damn, that's just looking to make money off of you by prescribing a million things, they're only going to make you worse.
Right. And I have to say my hat is off to Miss Jacqueline, because it's not an easy thing to, especially come on air, to admit that you had to seek some help to be able to get well, and a lot of people will not do that. They just won't do it, because of that stigma that is tied to it. So my hat is off to you, Miss Jacqueline. It really is.
Yeah, because I did both individual and group counseling.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just, like I said, definitely a big part of my growth and development. Mm-hmm. And of course, another thing that they worry about, of course, is the money, because they think it costs a lot of money. Mm-hmm. Well, when I went to the Southern California Counseling Center, at least when I went then, it's based off a sliding scale fee. Mm-hmm. And at the time, I didn't have a job. You know how much I paid for my counseling sessions?
What was that?
$1. $1.
Wow. To be well.
So it's yeah, because it's based off a sliding. They did it based off a sliding scale fee. So sometimes the money stops people. So you can't use that as an excuse. They have counseling centers that work with your finances, depending on your income. So you can use that as an excuse.
So again, because I know that you mentioned the facility that you had gone to seek help. Can you tell the folks again that center so that they can?
Yeah, Southern California Counseling Center.
Okay.
Oh gosh, right. I don't know the exact address.
That's okay.
It's on Pico. Yes, Southern California Counseling Center. That's where I went to. Right. I went because I went through for a period of a year and a half. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So it was good for me. You and me both. probably wouldn't have been here right now if I hadn't.
Yeah,
I'm glad you are.
Yeah, glad you are. All right, Miss Jacqueline. Well, thank you so much for hanging in and waiting for us to get you on. It's always a pleasure to have you on, and we look forward to having you on again, because I know you'll come back, right?
Oh, you know I will. And thank you so much for having me on. Y'all, love you all. Take care and have a good night.
We love you.
Love it. Good night. But we also got to look at. And I think Cheryl brought it up earlier, we've got to also include the spirituality or the spiritual side of healing also, okay? And I think that helps also. I think in my situation, because I had a deep roots in the church, and I was able to, like they say, pray your way through it, So
Mhm.
medication and praying my way through it, having faith that I was gonna get better because I wasn't gonna let it beat me down
Yeah.
and kick me down, because if I had, I wouldn't be where I am now.
Right.
So I fought, I fought, It
Right.
took a while. I ain't lying. It wasn't easy, okay?
Right.
Like I said, you put yourself out, you neglect your family, okay?
Right. Right.
And so it wasn't easy, but I held on to my faith that
Good.
it's gonna be better,
Absolutely. So I want to try and address a couple of comments that were made when we had Jacqueline on. They were coming in, but Colleen Rivet, she says
Hervé.
Rivet. I said that last week, didn't I? It's Rivet. Let me get my French on, Rivet. So many people that have mental illness don't even know they have them. They don't seek help, and there's nobody out there looking out for them. Also, Al Brooks. Hey, Al Brooks. He joined us a little bit ago. He says doctors mostly go with the process of elimination when researching or giving a diagnosis. So
15 years of research. No, thank you.
yeah, yeah.
One blood test was all it took.
Yeah, but let me ask you guys something, and I want to ask Derek this question because when we're talking about diagnosis of mental health, but specifically geared towards women, anything in your research that said that most women have difficulty with their healthcare providers and diagnosing them correctly when it has to do with a mental illness? Or is it that most women that you might have found in your research and through your reading, were they told that, oh, get over it, it's a woman thing, it's a hormone imbalance, instead of maybe a psychological issue for real? Anything in your research that said that?
I think it's a combination of both. And typically when they're dealing with women, we know traditionally women, suffer from PTSD or some form either during the pregnancy and maybe after the pregnancy or whatever it may be. But I don't think it's necessarily centered around women. It's just in general. I'm saying a lot of people just aren't trained to diagnose mental health issues. They will come up with wrong diagnosis. Like one of the viewers had mentioned, and we had mentioned it before, anxiety attacks is a form of a mental health disorder. So when we're looking at mental health, as I mentioned it myself, I didn't know that I was having these issues. I didn't know I was depressed. I didn't know that I had PTSD. But my wife and people that were very close to me noticed that I was changing.
Mhm.
And like Jacqueline had mentioned before, had she not sought the help, she probably wouldn't be here today. And with me, it literally almost ruined my marriage, my kids, and I, for me, I don't know if I would have went down that road.
Mhm.
When you're dealing with death, and Reggie had mentioned before, spirituality plays a key role. But what happens is that you question God, you get angry with God. How would a God do this to people that I love? I had one after the other, and it was like first it started with my great grandma, then my
Mhm.
dad, then my aunt, then my grandma, then my Uncle Ronnie, then
Yeah.
my Uncle Nuke, then my granddaddy. So it just piled up on me. And I'm one who doesn't deal with death well. And I can say it, I generally do not deal with death well. And there's a lot of other things I don't deal with, but there's coping strategies when you deal with it. When we talk about women, women typically are nurturers. And I think what happens is that they nurture so much that they don't have time to deal with who's nurturing them. So when they're dealing with an issue, they're like, well, y'all nurturers, y'all should be okay. Suck it up and deal with it. And it's unfortunate that society looks at it this way, because everyone, regardless of who you are, you have suffered, or you may still be suffering with some type of mental health issue that either is diagnosed or undiagnosed. And I think the biggest thing, especially when we're doing African American community, that we have to erase the stigma. I say you have to seek the help, whether you do it spiritually, professionally, through friends, whether it's organizations. Have some. And a lot of times people they don't necessarily want you to judge them. They just want you to listen. And I think
Mm-hmm.
sometimes that's where people get upset or they get scared. Now you're going to judge me, or I may lose my, from the military to even acknowledge you have a mental health issue means that you might not get promoted. They may kick you out. Imagine you're going there crying and asking for help, and they say, well, you know what, you got to get out. Or if you play a sport, or you're a police officer, I'm saying you're looking at, something that cost you to have that. But yet they're saying, you know what, well, because you have it, you're not good enough to stay in, rather than giving them the help.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was actually trying to, while you were speaking and I was listening and all of that good stuff, I was trying to find the information for the National Association for Mental Health. And I wanted to be able to put that up so that no matter where you are, you could get in touch with them for any information or any help that you might need. I'm actually going to post that in just 2 seconds. I'm kind of trying to do all of this and talk at the same time. So, oh my gosh.
Why are you looking for that? What I did want to ask Shara, since we had focused on women, and I always tell people, as a man, I will never understand a woman because I'm not a woman. I'm just not. I'm saying I could sit here and read all the books I want. I can have all the PhDs and whatever, but I'm not going to be able to understand the mindset of a woman. And when you either faced with, whether it's a man or a black man, when you know that they have an issue, how do you get through to them that they need to get help without, escalating the situation?
Oh, that's a loaded question. As so loaded. I mean, there's so many things that depends on the circumstances. How well you know this person? What type of mental?
Well, we're talking about We're talking about them. So as you know them and you see them, it's like for me.
I think what I would do is what worked for me, and that is, I think there seems to be times in life where, as an adult, we still feel on some subliminal, subconscious level, we need approval or an invitation to do something. And I think what I would do, and whether it was a man or a woman, speak from my own personal experience and remind them, aside from our souls, we are machines, and our machines need to be taken care of. And it's okay to go and talk to a complete stranger. As you said, they're not there to judge. And sometimes it just feels good to purge whatever is bucky bouncing around in your head that's driving you crazy with rage or depression or feelings of inadequacy or whatever the issue may be. I might even offer to take them to some place or be the shoulder that they vent to. I think people need to know that there are people who are willing to listen without casting stones. We're all human, regardless of gender. You may not know what it's like to be a woman, and I may not know what it's like to be a man, but I know what it's like to be human. And at our core, we're capable of the same emotional responses and experiences. So, I just let go of the, toxic masculinity, if that's what's holding you back. Let go of the notion that I'm going to judge you as a man or as a woman. Let go all of that and just confront the issue.
And I'm not going to say who my friend is, but a friend of mine, they sent me a personal message and asked me why is the focus on African Americans. And I could kind of see what he's talking about, but because he didn't catch it from the beginning, when you look at mental health or mental health disorders, when you look at the percent of population, about 13% of the population, about 40% of that are African Americans are homeless. So if we address mental health overall, don't you think society would be much better? Isn't that what we want? We want society as a whole to be better. But if we, and this is just one form, this is just one way to address it, to combat it. But I understand that mental health covers all races, covers all countries. But people always say, if you're not going to help me fix my community, I have no choice but to try to help my community. And if I'm helping my community helps out others, I'm happy with that too. You know, I'm not saying, hey, you can't come as someone who's not African American and watch this and get something from it, because you can. You know, you don't necessarily have to be African American to watch this show or to seek the advice. What we're saying is that as a target, this is what we experience. And this is the stigma which is in the African American community. And if you don't understand the stigma, you probably don't live in the African American community or haven't. So it's that empathy that we talk about. You're not in the shoes, but you know, if my friend has been so blessed not to have mental health issues, bless you. You're fortunate. But I don't know too many who have it. That's all I'll say on that.
All right. Well, we hit that mark right on that. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, I might drop.
So
He's still my boy. He's still my boy.
But you know, I really thank you guys for attacking this topic tonight, because it's very important. You know, I myself have a family member who suffers from manic depression, and it is one of the most difficult mental health diseases that one can endure. Not just for the person who is suffering from it, but for the family members who are also involved in that life. So again, you know, I have to say, I thank you guys for bringing this to the forefront, putting it on the table, and providing this information and this dialogue for those who are watching tonight. So I really do. I thank you for doing this. I am going to start to bid us good night. Does anybody have a last thought?
The only thing that we didn't get a chance to talk about was acknowledging that the medical professions, EMP, and police all need to learn how to empathize, understand, and better handle people with mental illness when they're stopping people. Yeah,
I agree. I totally agree. Reggie, Derek, last word.
Hey, we gotta. It's for real. It's happening in our community, and we've got to combat it. You know, I agree with Derek. It's not a black thing. It's an all people's thing. But this is a community we identify with, and we're trying to figure out how we can alleviate these issues in our community and help those that need to be helped. But it helps everyone. If we can help one in our community, we can help all of them. Okay, so you just got to, you know, stay woke.
Yeah.
Issues, you know.
Yeah.
And for me, I say this really with all sincerity and with the bottom of my heart. If you ever feel that, and this is for anybody who's watching now or later, if you ever feel suicidal, please call 911 or the National Suicide Prevention Hotline at 1-800-273-8255. Talk. And for veterans, press 1, as well as you can call Stop Soldier Suicide at 844-889-5610. This is something that really is dear to my heart. It's not something I publicize and let me go ahead and get awards and, you know, a photo op. This is real. And mental health is not about photo ops. It's about getting that help that you need. And hopefully, you know, this show and you know, provided you with some resources. And, you know, I just thank the crew for allowing me to choose this topic for this week before I head to Vegas and see Tony. I'll be on your show tomorrow. I'm just kidding. But I appreciate it.
All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Derek. Terry, we do appreciate the subject for tonight. We're going to go ahead and get out of here, but let me do this before we leave. Make sure that you head on over to Facebook under Real World News TV here with Reggie Kearney, Chair Ann Tappan, and Mr. Derek Terry. Hit the follow button. Follow this show. They give you some great information every week, every Tuesday night. So make sure that you come on back and got a good show lined up for you for next week as well. The show always starts at 5:30 p.m. Pacific, 7:30 p.m. Central, and 8:30 on the East Coast. Make sure that you come on back here on Facebook under Hot Topics Talk Radio for tomorrow night with me, Yvonne Baker, and Mr. Chris Smith. Tomorrow night, we're going to be talking about making a choice between your children and your man.
And your boo.
Oh, I won't be on that. I won't be on that show then.
Very short show, that one.
Yeah.
So if you are having a hard time figuring out if you're going to take the side of those badass kids or your boo daddy, you got to make a choice.
You gotta take your kids over the boo daddy, okay?
So that's what's on tap for tomorrow night on Hot Topics Talk Radio. The show starts at 8 o'clock p.m. Pacific, 10 o'clock Central, and 11 o'clock on the East Coast. Come on back on Facebook under Hot Topics Talk Radio. And again, at the top of the week, we've got Real World News TV. And for those who have been questioning me about men, oh God, it's coming back. The show is coming back. I just got to get a time frame, so just be patient, okay? All right. So we will see you guys back here under Real World News TV, again with Reggie Kearney, Cherry Ann Tappan, and Mr. Derek Terry next week on Tuesday night. Oh, until then, we will see you and have a wonderful rest of your evening and a fantastic rest of your week. We are out of here. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.